Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Molly Mattox, and I'm excited to welcome you to a very special interview with Dr. Amanda Lewis. She is a research associate and adjunct professor at Georgetown University. She also works directly with the Prison Justice Initiative, and she advocates for the exoneration of wrongly convicted individuals through the Making an Exoneree project. Thank you so much for being here today, Amanda. I'm very happy to have you. Could you start off by just explaining what exactly Making an Exoneree is and what part you play in it?
So Making an Exoneree is a very unique class. It started at Georgetown University as an undergraduate class, and we would take about 15 undergraduate students, and they would be assigned in groups of 3 a wrongful conviction case. So someone who we believe was convicted for a crime that they did not commit. And they have now, as the program has evolved, been paired with a law student at Georgetown Law Center as well. And they reinvestigate these cases over the course of a semester, and they produce short documentaries at the end of the semester, and they can be used for different things. So obviously bring some media attention to cases that were often, very old, or maybe they received some other publicity previously that was completely in the opposite direction. And then cases that have high reinvestigation potential. So maybe they weren't really investigated properly to begin with, they're maybe alternative suspects, or they've exhausted their appeals. So they're at a point where legally they don't have a lot of options. And so we can help try to find new evidence that gets them back in the door in the appeals process. And so that's how it started. I've been working with the program for a few years now, and a lot of what I do focuses on the reinvestigation and then the initial case review. I know a lot about kind of what you would typically see in these cases. So I help with choosing the cases, and then I help with a lot of the reinvestigation and guiding students, setting up interviews, things like that.
That's a really unique thing to be working on. My question leading up from that then is, well, first of all, you have a PhD in criminology, which is very amazing. And then what inspired you to take that and then go specifically into the innocence work that you do today?
Yeah, so when I was an undergraduate, I was a psychology and philosophy major, and I took a legal psychology class. And that was when I first really learned about wrongful conviction and just how prevalent it was and some of the contributing factors. So there's estimations that somewhere between 4 to 10% of the prison population is wrongfully convicted. But knowing that, I just felt like this is a really important area. I'm don't understand how this happens. I'd like to do something to prevent it or to help people. And I didn't know exactly how to do that without a law degree, right? Like you just think, okay, you have to have a law degree. So when I went to grad school, I really was focused on juvenile prevention, rehabilitation at first. And then I took another course with who ended up being my advisor on actual innocence and wrongful conviction, and kind of fell back in love with that work again. And I also, in general, am a believer that we need to reform our system, that we don't focus or prioritize reform or actually treating and helping people if they did commit crimes. But wrongful conviction is almost a way to get people involved in that work who might not otherwise care about those same issues. And so I think that is one reason that another reason that I'm really interested in kind of continuing to do that, because you can explain to people, okay, this should not happen. Here's how it happens. And I think a lot of those things that you do to prevent it can also prevent other issues that we see.
That's really admirable. Well, so when you're going through the process, obviously to exonerate someone who's wrongfully convicted, you need someone who's wrongfully convicted. How do you even find those individuals? And then on top of that, how do you approach them with offering your help?
Yeah, so our program is set up we have like an intake form where we kind of solicit information on cases if you are wrongfully convicted. So we have people apply, but at the same time as that, sometimes being integrated in this community. So I've gone to the Innocence Network conferences, which you all probably hear about the Innocence Project, which is like one of the first one in the United States in New York. There's also other organizations that are innocence organizations within this network. So every year they have a conference, a lot of exonerees go, family members go, and so I have been going for several years, so I now have a group of people that I know in that world. And so they will kind of connect me with cases, or maybe I'll know, okay, this one cop was known for interrogation techniques that led to wrongful convictions, right? Especially in Philadelphia, one of the cases we're working now. So when you see those patterns again, it can help you recognize it. But sometimes we'll reach out to people whose cases we heard about, we saw online. Other times we have referrals, and then other times it's just someone that applies. And then we essentially review. We have a team of people now from the law school at Georgetown and other volunteers and individuals, some retired lawyers, who will review cases, transcripts, issues, conduct legal calls if we think that there's merit, to then take them on.
You became a private investigator recently. Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
What made you decide to do that? And also, how has that helped you now in doing the work that you do?
Yeah, so I just took the training in Virginia. And basically, what I realized, last year when we were working with a couple different PIs that were doing pro bono, we would find someone, we'd find a witness, or we'd look for a jury member. We would get information about their name, where they lived, their general age, send it off. A couple days later, they'd send us a report, right? It really started with me being like, I need quicker access to these reports. And the only way you can do that is by having a PI license. So that was initially what I was like, okay, I just need to figure out how I can get this information quicker, because the students will travel. If they're traveling, they meet a neighbor, they say, oh, you need to talk to this guy. I don't remember where he lives now, or I don't know his number. How do you get that information if you're only there for a couple of days, right? And then I have just really fallen in love with like that kind of deep dive, like digging into those issues. I've learned a lot more about how to use things like Ancestry.com, Lexis through the access the law students have, and you can get certain information like address from Ancestry or from Lexis, plug that in, then it gives you phone numbers. And I think that's something we just need on our staff, is somebody who has that training, who has that ability to run those reports and to kind of provide more supervision on reinvestigation, because it is so sensitive what we're doing, right? You go to talk to a witness, that might be your only chance.
So expanding on that process of exoneration, when you are attempting to exonerate somebody, is the process the same for everybody, or is it a case-by-case basis? Do you always try and prove someone innocent, or do you just negotiate a release deal, or how does that work?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. So the goal almost always is to get an exoneration, to prove someone innocent. It's very hard to do. And it's hard to do not because it's necessarily hard in the court of public opinion, but because legally, getting someone out of prison, winning successfully on appeal is very hard to do, especially if there was a jury trial. So I think that we definitely have a lot of cases where, depending on the person, we will try to get a modification where they get their sentence reduced, or there are people that decide that they want to take a plea deal and then fight it from the outside. If they do that, it's typically an Alford plea, which essentially is a plea where you are not admitting guilt. You're literally saying, I'm innocent, but I think that there's enough evidence where the prosecution could convict me, or I'm concerned that I'm going to get convicted. I think we have more of those releases, certainly, than we have actual exonerations.
So do you know how many successful exonerations has the Prison Justice Initiative had throughout the years of doing this?
Yeah, so I will say, I'll phrase it in terms of releases, because a full formal exoneration is very difficult, but we've had 12 releases so far in the 8 years.
That's extremely impressive. You also teach in the prison system in Maryland. Can you talk about what it's like to work in an environment that most people would assume is dangerous?
Sure. So yeah, part of our the Georgetown Prisons and Justice Initiative, 2 of our programs are prison education programs. So one is it's actually a bachelor's degree program that's offered at a maximum security prison in Maryland. So essentially, students apply from across the state of Maryland who are incarcerated for the program, and we have cohorts of 25 students admitted at a time. And they will spend 5 years taking classes, fall, spring, and summer semesters, and will graduate with a Georgetown bachelor's degree. And I will say that my students, they are extremely dedicated, right? So a lot of them have been incarcerated for a long time, sometimes decades, and did not have opportunities to seek higher education. And so they are interested. It kind of gives them this time when they're inside where they don't feel like they're in prison for a little bit. I would say that, a lot of my students ended up in prison at a young age. Often certain circumstances or things that they were exposed to very early on. And by providing them an education, you are helping increase opportunities that they have once they get out. They're in a position where they have not been able to have their voices heard for a really long time in that type of setting. And so they're way more willing to ask questions. You know, grades are usually really solid. They will go above and beyond. They're often talking about things that they never have had the chance to engage in or look into. So it's been really great.
So you have a lot on your plate. You're doing a lot and you're working very unique jobs. What motivates you to keep doing what you're doing?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good question. And I think it's in particular a really difficult job and can be really discouraging a lot of times because it's such a long process. I think those little wins in between help, but the people truly, the hope that they have, both the students in prison to just learn, to educate themselves, and then ultimately get out. Some of them have life sentences, right? I think that their perspective and their family's perspective is what really keeps me going more than anything else. And just kind of being able to give yourself some grace too, because I think you have to be honest and realistic about what you can and cannot do. Because you don't want to promise somebody that you can do something you can't. So whatever you can control, you have to try to, focus on that. Otherwise, you just gotta have to let it fuel you in a different way and not let it just completely shut you down as well.
Dealing with something like that, definitely good to spend time with yourself and also have that anchor of control to kind of fall back on whenever you're dealing with other stuff. Well, that's all the time I have for you today. Thank you so much for being here. It was an amazing interview, and I hope that you guys enjoyed it and learned a lot.
Thank you so much, and you can watch any of the documentaries from the cases that we've covered previously on our YouTube channel, which is, I believe it's the Georgetown Prisons and Justice Initiative, and there's also Making an Exoneree.
Thank you so much. Thank you.